Pure Picks. I'm your host, James, and we're here to break down UFC 301. Pantoja versus Erceg. It's going to be coming up this Saturday, May 4th. Should be an interesting card. Before we get into that, I wanted to recap our last week. And once again, we're on a bit of cold streak. Down 1.71 units, and I always want to be transparent and we'll always recap whether it's a win or a loss. But I think that some of the plays that we had were great. Other plays, obviously, not so great. Overall, as a group, we were down a unit 0.71. But personally, the plays that I had, we were positive. So I do want to go over some of those plays with you guys today. These were my plays for last week. We had the dog odds on Bogdan Guskov, and that was more of a late week pick because earlier in the week, I was actually on Ryan Spann, but later on in the week, I just felt like those were some really trappy odds on Ryan Spann and really shouldn't be a minus 200 favorite over anybody, in my opinion. And that turned out to be true. I mean, Bogdan Guskov was able to knock out Ryan Spann, and it looked like a 50-50 fight from what I saw. So glad that we were able to lock in those dog odds at plus 167. We did lose a few dog plays like with Lipsky and then Means, obviously. The Lipsky one was closer. However, I think she lost the decision 29-28, so that was fair. Means obviously got KO'd in the first round. Last time, I'm going to back a 40-year-old dog because Uros Medic was much faster in there. He got off to a great start, Tim Means, but he just didn't have the chin at 40 years old, and Earl's Medics was just much too quick for him and too fast for him. So kind of understood the lesson there. We did hit our parlay of the week, over 2.5 Figlac and over 2.5 Martic Man. Comes out to minus 108, and we put 2.16 units there to gain 2 units. And both of those fights, the man one got a little tricky at the end, but I think those are pretty safe over 2.5s. And we had a little moonshot parlay for a quarter of a unit on Perez and Lane. I tried to tell my man Top G, Alex Perez is. I really like the signs that I'm seeing from him. And he just signed up another fight for Tagir Ulanbekov, and I think this guy is about to make a run pretty soon. He's been inactive for the majority of his career, basically. And now I think he's getting the hang of it. He's getting the weight cut down. He's lessened injuries. So I really think Perez is getting and becoming a great dog. I mean, I wonder what his odds will be for that Ulanbekov fight, but I'm happy to ride that train. And obviously we lost because of Austin Lane. He had a great round one, and just overall a horrible game plan after that. I think he gassed and didn't have enough grappling there. So looked good for a sec, but obviously that didn't work out. Going back to the Perez thing, though, I mean, Nicolau, I think he just has a durability issue, and we saw that in that fight. He got knocked out. I think that Royval knockout really changed him, in my opinion. And I would not be surprised if this becomes a recurring theme in the future. So we lost a quarter of a unit there, but overall we put in 5.41 units and gained 1.42 units for a ROI of 26.25%. So overall good week personally, but as a group we were down, and we want to continue to fine tune the process and really be in the green each and every week as a group. So hopefully with some more process improvements going forward, we'll be able to get that green for you guys going forward as well. But let's move on to this week, because I do think that there's going to be some spots that we could potentially play in this week. I don't know if it's going to be the best card to actually play and lay some units on, because I do see some traps. But overall, I do think that there are some few plays that we could play. Just after last week, I think that we should be a little bit more conservative rather than try to go on the offensive here, because man, Brazil has been known to have a lot of traps. The last time they were in Rio for their hometown people, right? I feel like a lot of people lose in Brazil that are maybe hometown favorites more often than not. So I'm a little bit wary on some of the fighters this week, but let's move on and check them out. So I'm going to go with a little bit of a faster pace for this week. We want to get into a little bit more of a quick pick format. So without further ado, the first fight will be Alessandro Costa versus Kevin Borjas. It's going to be the fight in the lightweight division, flyweight division rather. And you guys see the record there, last five. Both guys are coming off a loss right now. As we look for the odds right now, we see that Costa is minus 133. I'm going to have to go with Borjas in this matchup. I mean, I do think that this is going to be more of a fade on Costa than it is a riding a Borjas kind of play. I think that Borjas is going to be the better striker on the feet, and he's going to be able to easily outstrike Costa. Borjas does tend to struggle with fighters who can outmatch his volume, and I just don't think that will be the case for Costa because he is a lower volume than Borjas. Now, there are two reasons why I'm going to pass on this fight ultimately. I do believe that Borjas has a huge grappling hole, and I could see Costa coming in with a grapple heavy approach to take advantage of Borjas' weak 56% takedown defense. And Borjas gassed a little bit too in his last fight against Van. So I think that Van's obviously a superb striker, specifically with the body shots, but I just didn't like the fact that Borjas looked great in round one and then looked all out of sorts in round 2 and 3. So I'm going to go with Borjas via KO, but I'm just going to pass on this fight overall because I feel like there's better dogs throughout the card and maybe better plays that we can do going forward. Let's move on to the next fight that we have on the prelims, and this will be Ismael Bonfim versus Vinc Pichel. Bonfim's obviously coming off a loss where he lost against BSD, and Vinc Pichel is coming off a loss to Marco Manson. That was 2 years ago, so he's coming in on a 2-year layoff. Let's look at the odds for this fight. Right now, it's minus 550 for for Ismael Bonfim. Opened up at a minus 400. Yeah, I gotta go with Ismael Bonfim here, and I think that he's going to be one of my parlayable pieces on the card. I just think that Pinchel's coming off of a 2-year layoff, 41 years old. That last fight that he lost was to a 40-year-old Marco Manson. I mean, I think there's just one too many red flags for Vinc Pichel here. And I think that, with the 2-year layoff that included injuries, I think that's just too many red flags. I mean, I do think that Bonfim is going to make a run at I don't think that he's going to make a run on the rankings anytime soon, but he's in the prime of his career, and I think that will be enough to overcome whatever Pichel has to throw at him. So Bonfim has only lost via sub in his career, and Pichel also has not had a sub win in his career. So I think Bonfim should just cruise here. I have Bonfim inside the distance, and minus 550. I know is a little wide right now, but I still think that there is some parlayable value there. This might be the peak. Maybe there's going to be a little bit of a buyback. But I think that he is a safe parlayable piece for this week. Let's move on to the next fight. So we have a UFC debut for 2 women. So there's going to be a little bit of limited information on them because both of them have not fought that many times in their career thus far. We have Dione Barbosa versus Ernesta Kareckaite. Dione Barbosa, I mean, she's coming off a win in the Dana White Contender Series. Same thing with Ernesta. As we look for the odds, we see that Dione is minus 205 and opened up at minus 185. I do understand that line movement and why the odds are set that way. I know I'm picking Barbosa in this matchup, and the main reason why I'm really picking Barbosa is that there's going to be a huge grappling hole, in my opinion. I think that Ernesta is much more green in the grappling, and she also has a below average takedown defense and can get held down from what I've seen. So this has the makings of Barbosa just being able to land a takedown and most likely subbing Ernesta on the ground. Since this is a UFC debut for both women, I'm going to stay away from this fight completely because there are going to be much better plays across the card. Let's move on to the next fight, and this is going to be a very interesting fight. We have another UFC debut in Mauricio Ruffy versus Jamie Mullarkey. And, Ruffy 9-1 is coming off that KO win in the Dana White Contender Series. Jamie Mullarkey is coming off a loss, a KO loss to Nasrat Hasparaf. I mean, that's not good look. Looking at the odds right now, Ruffy is minus 190, and he opened up at a minus 155. I see where people are coming from there here also. I mean, give me Ruffy in this fight. I just think that Mullarkey has just taken one too many shots to the dome, and I think that he just has some decreased signs of durability, and that's a really big concern with a guy like Ruffy. Mullarkey also has, a lesser striking defense as well in his recent fights, and I just think that that's going to get Ruffy the KO here. You know, Mullarkey has the solid all around game plan and skill set, but he just doesn't excel at any one area. So I don't think that he's going to be able to out grapple Ruffy because Ruffy does have some good takedown defense, and I don't think he's going to be able to last long on the feet with a guy like Ruffy because the power advantage will just be immense on Ruffy's side. So I think that the only reason why I'm not playing this fight is that will be Ruffy's debut, and he's going to be a minus 190 debut in his hometown. Seems kind of trappy to me, and but I think he should get the KO though. I mean, Jamie Mullarkey just got KO'd by Nazareth in round 1, I believe, his last fight. Yeah, I think that's a really bad sign. So Ruffy via KO for me, but I'm not looking to play this fight just yet. I think we need some more data on Ruffy here. Let's look at the next fight on the prelims, and we have Joaquim Silva versus Drakkar Klose. Now, Joaquim Silva, he is 13-4, and he was coming off a win against Clay Guida, who's another old kind of veteran. Drakkar Klose, 14-2-1, pretty underrated record, if I might add. He's coming off that slam KO against Joe Selecki. Looking at the odds right now, we have Klose at minus 177, open up at minus 140. So a slight line movement on the side of Klose there. I'm going to have to go Klose here. I do like him in this matchup. I think that Klose should be the better striker in this matchup. And I really think that Silva is going to be KO or bust in this matchup. I don't think that Klose has ever been submitted before. And, Silva is just more fallen in love with his hands lately. I mean, he does come from a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background, but I feel like Silva is really KO or bust, especially in the last few fights. He's been finished in some of his fights as well. So I think Klose is going to be the better striker on the feet, and he should have enough of a wrestling skill set and background to stay safe should it hit the ground. While Silva does have the power advantage in this matchup, I just think that Klose is going to be the more durable of the two. And like I mentioned, Klose has 1 KO loss, which was to Beneil Dariush, and Silva has 3 KO losses in the UFC already, and one of them was to Rick Glenn. So that's not a good look at all. I'm saying Klose via decision. I think this fight will go the distance, and I actually like Drakkar as a money line play because I do like his finishing equity. I feel like he could potentially catch Silva, and Silva could come in reckless. I think he can catch him. So yeah, give me Drakkar Klose in this matchup. I do like him as a solid money line play here. Although I liked it better last night when I was looking at it. It's minus 177 now. It was like 150 something before. So yeah, I think it's getting a little wide. Let's look at the next fight on the prelims, and we have Gene Silva versus William Gomis. So, man, this is going to be a very debatable fight, in my opinion. I've seen a lot of feelings one way or the other. Gene Silva's 12-2. He's coming off a win against Weston Wilson, so it's not that great of a win, but he is 12-2. William Gomis is coming off a 3-fight winning streak in the UFC, so that's kind of underrated a little bit. He did fight someone who was more so of a UFC debut his last fight. He's 13-2. Let's look at the odds for this right now. We have Gene Silva at minus 122, open as a dog at plus 115. So I actually like those dog odds. Not so much now as a favorite. This is going to be a pretty binary fight, right? I mean, I think that William Gomis, I'm leaning with Silva here, but I've never been a fan of Gomis' style. He just fights a very low volume, safe kind of fight with takedowns mixed in every now and then. I just think that, while he is on a 3-fight winning streak, I believe that Gomis will have trouble with the wild power that Silva has on the feet. And I could also easily see Gomis staying on the outside and safe. as he has the longer reach and height and correct style to trouble Silva. So because I'm not confident either fighter, I will end up passing on this fight, but I will pick Gene Silva via KO. But I'm just gonna pass on this fight because I can see both sides of how both of these guys could win. I guess that's why the odds are that close. So yeah, Gene Silva via KO, but I'm gonna pass on this fight for now. Let's move on to the next fight that we have on the prelims, and this is gonna be a pretty good banger here of a matchup. I wish this was on the main card actually. We have Elvis Brener versus Myktybek Orolbai, and Brener 16-3. He's coming off a really good KO win in the UFC, and he's had some great dog performances. I mean, the Garam Kutalese performance was fantastic. Orolbai 12-1-1. He's coming off that dominating performance against Uros Medic at welterweight, and he's now going back to lightweights in this matchup. So I think this is going to be a pretty fun fight. Orolbai is going to be in his natural weight class, so this is going to be the first time that we're going to see him at 155 in the UFC. The odds right now are Orolbai minus 253, open up at minus 211. Yeah, I got to go with Orolbai here. I like him as a lock, actually. The Elvis Brener train has been moving, it's been trucking along, but I think this is where it stops. I mean, I know that Brener is a dog that will fight for your units. He's a very exciting fighter. But I just don't think that will matter much here because he will be out wrestled by this mauling wrestler in Orolbai. I mean, Orolbai came in a short notice, up a weight class, and looked dominant on the ground against a legit fighter in Uros Medic. Who, while he does have a grappling hole, Uros Medic is a fantastic striker, and Orolbai was able to just negate that. I will give Brener some love, and I think that he'll survive to a decision loss where he'll just get maybe wet blanketed for the whole fight, because he's never been finished before. So yeah, but I still like Orolbai via decision. I think he's a potential parlay piece just because I feel like he's going to just wet blanket Elvis Brener for the whole fight. Let's move on to the next fight on the prelims, and we have Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Iasmin Lucindo. So Karolina 16-7, and she's coming off a win against Belbita. Iasmin Lucindo 15-5, coming off a win against Viana, sub win. Right now the odds are Lucindo at minus 425, open up at minus 325. Yeah, give me Lucindo in this matchup. I mean, I understand that Karolina's coming off some good victories, but I think she's gonna meet a pretty bad matchup in Lucindo. The grappling is gonna be where I think the gap's gonna be. Lucindo's a much better grappler than Karolina's opponents during her winning streak, and I believe that she will have the takedowns to just keep Karolina on the ground. I do believe that it will be somewhat competitive on the feet. Lucindo, I still believe that she'll have the power advantage on the feet here, though. So she's gonna have something. She's gonna give Karolina something to deal with on the feet and on the ground with the sub threat, obviously. So yeah, I like Lucindo as a inside the distance kind of play. I think that's gonna be a club and sub, and I think she's a parlay piece for me personally. I know that it could get dangerous to trust women's MMA, big favorite, but I do think the odds are somewhat correct here. I feel that there will be too much of a gap in physicality and in the grappling. I think Karolina's like 38 years old right now, and Lucindo's 22. So, I mean, I know she's a little young, but if you look at her actual record as well, I mean, she's 15-5. Karolina's 16-7, and even that just shows me that she's been fighting a lot of fights even at her young age. So yeah, give me Iasmin Lucindo here. Next fight on the prelims, and this is going to be the future prelim of the night. We have Joe Anderson Brito versus Jack Shore. Brito is obviously coming off that ninja choke submission win over JSP, so that was a great win by him. Jack Shore is coming off that sub win against Marquand Armikani about a year ago. I think Armikani was cut after that. Looking at the odds right now, we have Brito at minus 170, opened up at minus 120. I'm going to go with Brito here. Man, I just feel like Brito has a lot of advantages over Jack Shore. Jack Shore is a former bantamweight that's moves up to featherweight. The only reason why I'm a little hesitant on Brito for now is I feel like the minus 170 odds are a bit trappy. I feel like he should be a bigger favorite in this matchup. And, I just don't see a way that Shore is going to be able to stay safe in this matchup. Brito should have the power advantage on the feet and be the more dangerous grappler on the ground. The only concern that I have on Brito is that in his loss to Bill Algeo, he slowed down towards the end of the fight, and I do not believe that Shore will have the high volume striking to counter Brito throughout the fight. Though he's more of a grappler, and I feel like them both grappling, I feel like that could lead to a dangerous finish, more likely on the Brito side. So gas tank issues aside, I'm still going to go with Brito, but that'll be the one concern that I do have is that if he starts gassing out, Jack Shore could then take over with his grappling and his overall skill set and game plan as well. Let's move on to the next fight on the main card. And we finally arrived here. I mean, get ready, guys. There's going to be a bunch of heavy favorites, and we're going to try to navigate this as best as we can. We have Paul Craig versus Caio Borralho, 17-7, 1 for Paul Craig, and he's coming off that loss against Brendan Allen via submission. Caio Borralho, 15-1, and he's coming off that decision win over Abu Magomedov. Let's look at the odds for this fight right now. We have Caio at minus 600, open up at minus 355. I do like Caio in this matchup. However, man, I just do not trust him that much. I mean, minus 600. And the reason why is, I mean, I think both these men really like to grapple. They really like to be in that grappling kind of matchup. And history has shown us that Craig is a very dangerous submission specialist, who can end the fight suddenly and quickly. I think that Caio relies too much on the grappling for me to trust him in a matchup like this, where there will be opportunities for 50-50 positions and submission opportunities. So Caio is much better on the feet than Craig, but I mean, I just feel like, he does have a good high IQ fight kind of style, and his last win over Abu Magomedov kind of showed that because he did show some good striking, but I just don't trust him quite yet at minus 600 favor because I feel like he's going to try to grapple with Paul Craig, and that's going to lead to more of a 50-50 kind of fight. And obviously the odds right now are minus 600, so it gives me a little bit of a hesitance on Caio for now. But the pick for me is Caio via decision. I'm just going to pass on this fight for now, though. Let's move on to the next fight on the main card. We have Michel Pereira versus Ihor Potieria. Michel is, coming off that win against Mikhail Olajaychik in the first round submissions, coming off 2 first round finishes in the middleweight so far. Ihor Potieria is coming off that good win and against that guy at the UFC debut, Robert Bursek. So that was a pretty good win himself. I think he was a good dog odds there. Let's look at the odds. I mean, Michel Pereira is minus 600, opened up at a minus 500. I think that might be a bit wide, but I am in total agreement that Michel should be able to steamroll Ihor here. I mean, I think that this is going to be a kind of a back to the basics kind of matchup for Pereira. He's just going to be the quicker guy here. I feel like he's going to be the faster guy here. And I just don't see much that, that Ihor could do in this matchup, right? I mean, Ihor is going to be the stronger guy in the pocket and, in kind of close range situations, but I feel that the power will not be enough. I feel like this will look like the last fight against Mikhail Olajaychik, where Michel was able to show that skill set of a welterweight moving up to that weight. And, Mikhail also moved down from 205 to 185. So he's kind of facing a similar fighter in Ihor, in my opinion. Now, I do think that, Ihor has some better grappling than Mikhail, but I don't think that will be enough. And I do like that Pereira has shown some good improving fight IQ in his recent fights. So give me Pereira via sub, it could be a club and sub. I think he's a parlay piece, but minus 600 is getting a little high right now. I could see, maybe you can put him in a parlay, but I mean, minus 600 is high. So, I wouldn't go crazy over it, but I think a little bit of action on Pereira couldn't hurt this week. Let's move on to the next fight on the main card. And we have Anthony Smith versus Vitor Petrino here. Anthony Smith, he's coming off that KO loss against Khalil Roundtree. Obviously, he's been fighting forever. Vitor Petrino, 11-0, and he's coming off that decision win over Tyson Pedro. I think Pedro might have retired after that. So Petrino is minus 550, open up at 400, minus 400. And I don't really, I just don't really trust Vitor Petrino that much yet. I mean, I understand that, he's a really big prospect, but man, minus 550 odds, that's a little too high for me against a veteran like Smith. Smith has enough of a veteran skill set on the feet and on the ground to give me pause in this fight against Petrino. And I feel that Petrino is just a little bit too green in his UFC career so far. And I could see Smith giving him some trouble with more technical striking and also an underrated ground game, which is centered on submissions. So I could see Smith winning a decision or a submission. However, I could also see him getting dominated due to his propensity to just take damage. I mean, we saw that with the Khalil Roundtree fight. He's getting a little older right now and he's taking a lot of damage in his career. So I'm just going to pass on this fight entirely. But I will say that if I had to back either side, I would actually back Anthony Smith in this matchup. I know it sounds a little crazy, but I just feel that he has enough of a veteran skill set to perhaps deter Vitor Petrino. Because I mean, Vitor Petrino in his last fight didn't look that great, right? I feel like he needed to maybe get a finish to kind of prove that he's been improving that by fight, but he still did get a win. But I'll be concerned in this fight because I do think that Anthony Smith is more of a dog than his last recent opponents here. Let's move on to the next fight on the main card, and we have the co-main event of the night. We have Jonathan Martinez versus Jose Aldo. Aldo's obviously coming off 2-year layoff, coming out of retirement to potentially save this card. Jonathan Martinez, is coming off a win against Adrian Yanez, KO win via leg kick. Aldo obviously lost against Marab 2 years ago, then retired. He has had some boxing matchups recently, but MMA is a much different game. Let's look at the odds right now. Martinez is minus 156, opened up at a plus 100 dog. So people instantly took those dog odds and then they took the slightly favored odds. I mean, yeah, I'm going back and forth in this matchup because I could see either fighter, being able to kind of implement their game plan. Right now, I'm leaning towards Aldo, but I think I'll pass on this co-main event. And the reasons why are this is going to be a 2-year layoff for Jose Aldo. Retirement, very unknown what he's actually going to look like in this matchup. I think that the Aldo that we last saw could give Martinez some problems. He's a great leg kicker himself, and he's a former champion with a good skill set. I just think that it also is probable that he comes back with some rust, and he's just, looking 37, maybe even older. And I think that he can look much slower than Martinez, which would be a bad sign for this matchup. So the reason why I'm going to pick Aldo is that I do think that this is going to be a bit of a big jump for Martinez. Martinez just fought Adrian Yanez, and, I don't think that he's on the caliber of a Jose Aldo who's been fighting contender fights for pretty much his entire career. So, I think that I'm going to go with Aldo via decision for now, but I'm going to pass. Maybe if the odds get a little wider, I think that I might go in with Aldo, but for now, I think yesterday it looked a little better, but yeah, for now, I'm going to go with Jose Aldo here. Let's move on to the main event of the evening, and we have Alexandre Pantoja versus Steve Erceg. This is one of the more random kind of main events for a pay-per-view. Pantoja is obviously coming off that decision win against Royval, where he got 50-45s on some cards, fighting against Steve Erceg, who's coming off of knocking out Matt Schnell, who, as we know, can get knocked out by a lot of people like Matheus Nicolau. So Pantoja right now is minus 194, opened at a minus 255. So people have been taking dog odds on Steve Erceg. I'm actually agreeing with those people and with that line movement. Initially, I wanted to take Pantoja because I feel that maybe the UFC is giving him a bone right now, and they want him to defend in Rio. But I just think that this is going to be a very tricky fight to predict, and I'm going to lean with Erceg. I think that this will be a bad matchup for Pantoja. I think Erceg's going to be the cleaner, more technical striker on the feet, and he has a strong background in grappling that should keep him safe against those submissions that Pantoja likes to pull out. Pantoja really also fights like a madman on the feet, and I believe that that style will eventually catch up to him, and Erceg has the tools to punish Pantoja on the feet and on the ground. The only concern I have is that obviously this will be Erceg's first 5-round fight, so we don't know what his cardio is, but given what I've seen, I believe that his style and pace lends itself well to 5-round championship fights. So, Pantoja does have a tendency to slow down the later the fight goes. And I feel that Erceg should be able to land the cleaner shots as the fight goes on. So I'm going with Erceg via KO. It might sound crazy, but for now I will pass unless the odds get a little juicier, which it seems like they are. I mean, minus 194. Maybe it will get back into this area where he was a minus 250 or so, and we can get on the Erceg train. But yeah, for now, I'm going to pass on it, but I do see the dog case for Steve Erceg this week. That about does it for the breakdown this week. Went with more of a quick pick kind of style. The detailed notes are always released for our premium Pure Picks Pros member on Discord. So I always post the notes with detailed notes in the Discord. People can look at that. And obviously, this video is always done, early in the week. So my picks could change, and the predictions and breakdowns could change later on the week. For example, last week I was on Ryan Spann earlier in the week, and then I changed my bias to Guskov at the later end of the week. So, to be able to keep up with the latest and greatest information, I recommend you guys join the Discord, become a Pure Picks Pro member at purepicks.gg. I think it's one of the good values. I mean, we do pretty well in live betting situations, and we do give some good detailed notes for you guys to make your own plays, right? So I feel that it's a good deal. Feel free to check it out. And we'll be back next week. I mean, I think that the UFC is going to be in a bit of a run, and there's going to be a fight every week. So I'm really excited to look at some of those. So yeah, best of luck everybody this week. We'll be back next week, and we'll see you guys soon.